Welcome to the new automation mindset where AI, automation, and integration come together. Successful automation is so much more than technology, it's a mindset. On this podcast, we're here to learn about this mindset from innovative leaders who actually practice it every single day. From Fortune 500 companies to the boldest startups, these leaders have reduced cost, crafted experience, and fueled growth with automation. They have transformed their companies and their careers. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. You may notice that this show matches the title of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling book, The New Automation Mindset by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. You'll hear references to the key ideas of this book, the growth, process, and scale mindsets throughout the show. If you'd like to explore them further, be sure to check out the book in hard copy or on Kindle. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Rama Akkiraju, the Vice President of AI and ML for IT at NVIDIA. Rama is a big part of the AI journey. Before joining NVIDIA, she was the CTO of IBM Watson AI Operations Product. She spent many years in AI research at IBM, was deeply involved in Watson, and Rama has co-authored over 100 technical papers, received over 50 patents, and is constantly on top leaders in AI lists. That includes Forbes and Fortune magazine. Rama brings to us a wealth of insight into AI, and I couldn't imagine anyone more illustrious to talk about AI and automation today. All right, so let's kick this off. I mean, so you co-authored like hundreds of technical papers. You have patents in that space. I mean, I think I saw 2022. You were named the USA Industry Innovator of the Year by the Women in AI organization. So that's awesome. What I would love to hear from you about is, how do you see that changed in 2023?
Yes, of course. The world has not been the same since ChatGPT got released. So much happening. Although the large language models have been around before and people have been working with them and such, it's really a watershed moment in AI where many use cases that were on the fringes are now suddenly possible to do with AI, especially in the world of deriving insights from unstructured data. So not just here at NVIDIA, where I have the role of enterprise AI and automation, basically applying AI and automation to transform our own NVIDIA processes, but everywhere in every company imaginable, there are projects that companies have spun up to figure out how to leverage this generative AI technologies and how to use large language models and the multi-model language models to transform business processes and their industries. So the world has not been the same. And the pace at which things are happening is also mind-boggling. Suddenly you see new developments happening every day, be it in in the open source domain or companies building the next big billion parameter model trained with trillions of tokens, or in high performance compute, the chips that are getting released from NVIDIA itself for powering the accelerated compute. So the pace at which innovation is happening has also significantly increased. So a lot happening in the presently and especially in the past 1 year, I would say.
Yeah, it's kind of, I was on a panel last week and, people were talking about 2023 and doing more with less. And, my comment was like, look, really this year, there's really only one thing I can think about. It's like when I see my 15-year-old son basically go to ChatGPT and type in the basically his biology essay that he has to write. And then 10 seconds later, you get something out where, we both looked at each other and said, like, you can't submit that because nobody would believe you can do that, right? Then I think that is the absolute doing more with less. Like, how can, this is crazy what's just happened. What do you think is the big change that happened? It seems to me like, before you always had to train these models. You had to be a data scientist. You had to be quite involved with the data, and now this is kind of falling away. It seems like it's all pre-trained. It somehow we're going through some democratization moment. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So these foundational models are so good at multitasking, and also are so good at processing multiple types of data, not just unstructured text data, but are able to take in and generate images and video and audio and all sorts of things, right? So that completely changed the game. And also, as you correctly noted, this notion of democratization, right? Where the data scientists were needed for pretty much manipulating and working with any of these models before, now all you need is an engineer who knows how to make an API call, at least to get started for the domain. And if you're using the likes of ChatGPT, GPT-4, or those models whose foundational models are trained with large enough amounts of data that are, multitasking well, you probably can get started with those APIs right away for many use cases in the enterprise, and only go to customization with your own data and fine-tuning and all of that for special use cases or specific set of situations. Even there, for customizations these days, you can leverage the APIs that these large language models themselves are making available. So it absolutely is, again, another big watershed moment where democratization is here, citizen development is here, and anybody who has an idea of how they can leverage these models for their use cases can just get started with it.
All right. No, this is how we feel. So I want to actually take you back into your past a little bit. So you might be surprised because, I was researching for this conversation. And so I found an article that you co-published in 2005, Dynamic Workflow Composition Using Markov Decision Processes. I'm not sure if you remember. It's been a while. And then obviously you also worked on whistles at some point, enriching like whistles in terms of semantic information and so on. And so here's the reason why, right? So at Workato, we're kind of in that space between automation and AI. We're an automation platform. A lot of this workflow is what we do. And now it's about infusing these workflows with AI services. And so it's this kind of playing together of AI and workflow that's really interesting to us. There's a Harvard Business Review article out there from one of the early people who were about BPR, business process redesign, all the way to the 90s, Tom Davenport. And he says, AI is really helping BPR to reemerge as a really important kind of thing. I wonder, how do you think about this? How do you think about AI and workflows, business processes? They could be in IT, they could be in finance, they could be a supply chain. I think the article back then was actually a supply chain example, if I remember correctly, from 2005. How do you see that? What do you think will happen here with AI and process?
Yeah. So just since you started that the historic moment, I just wanted to kind of connect the dots from the work that we were doing there and as a community we were doing back then to where we are. Back in the days when service-oriented architecture was very popular and was on the rise, where you had to, basically it was about, breaking these monolithic systems, software systems into more modular service-based architectures and service-based, API-based solutions. where you declaratively specify what the interface of your applications is. And then you try to either do a manual integration using web services description language types of things, or take those, semantic descriptions of applications interfaces and say, can we automatically map the interfaces of business applications that need to be integrated? So that was the context in which we were doing that work for semantic annotations for web services description language, which was a W3C standard. We put in at that time and got accepted. And the dynamic composition was the idea followed by that, where everybody, if their applications are modular and APIs are available, and their APIs input and output descriptions are declaratively made available in some sort of enterprise repositories, then you can dynamically compose applications, and then using different techniques for composing applications in supply chain and basic business applications, BPM space, right? So that was the state of the art back then. Come to present day times, how can we really kind of envision the same of a business application integration in business process world using LLMs? If you look at current LangChain type of frameworks that have come about, you can orchestrate various different applications and their integrations through these LangChain flows, if you will, and you can visually, using LangFlow types of frameworks, actually drag and drop and build your interfaces, integrations, and such. And that kind of reminds me actually of an analogy with Yahoo pipes from back in the days, right, when mashups were also attempted for application integration. But what has changed? Well, some things have changed. Some things still are more or less the same, right? Some things. What has changed is, there are lot more, I would say, standardized orchestration platforms now in the market, upon which you can more readily get integrations that you want, pre-built integrations and such. And these are automations that are pre-built and such. You can bring those into your environment and your ecosystem and automate things faster and build things faster. When it comes to application interfaces and schema matching and those types of things, I think LLMs can play an important role.
What we wanted to do with Workato was really to build something like that, but much more democratized. Much more visual, much more able to have business people, the operations people also understand it and be part of this journey. And it's kind of cool to see what has come across. I mean, again, I was reading your paper back then, and at the same time, I was talking to one of our guys, and he built a demo around security orchestration. So think about like a security analyst in IT who has today's, let's say, phishing attempt is happening, and then they have to do certain, they call it investigations, like certain research, and then based on what they find out, they then take certain actions, by be it deleting email or blocking a firewall or what it might be. So he actually used Workato recipes, which is these automation flows, these visual democratized automation flows, and instead of creating a procedural description of what needs to happen, he basically just described the tasks that need to happen. And then he actually described as the prompt to GPT what, almost like the job description of a security analyst. And lo and behold, GPT actually picked the right things to do. It picked the right sequence of steps to take. It never took an action without doing investigations. It actually fed the right parameters into these subfunctions. So it almost like orchestrated dynamically the process. And it blew my mind what might be ahead of us. I don't know if that makes sense. I think maybe it brings you back to your days there.
It makes sense. Yes, I know. We've been playing around with LLMs for several of such use cases in IT operations management use cases, similar to security operations, and to some extent on the security operations exactly for that phishing and spamming use case. Our sibling team in SecOps. Yes, you can go a long way by leveraging it. It's just by means of sheer brute force with the amount of data and examples that these large language models have seen. They're able to suggest really very good first drafts of actionable, workflows. And I would still recommend that somebody verifies them, validates them, but really, as with anything, with the first draft, saves so much time, effort, and more importantly, going back to that citizen development and empowering everybody to be at the same level of proficiency that that previously was only limited to a few experts, right? Everybody had to depend on those experts to figure out what to do. But here, everybody can get a good first draft and just validate it, verify with experts. But more people can do those tasks now, not just a limited set of experts in an enterprise.
No, perfect. So I have one question that's been near and dear to my heart, and I was just given your expertise and your long experience in this area, I'm just be curious what you think about it. So we have an advisor on our advisory board, Scott Brinker. He's actually really an expert in marketing technology. But what's interesting is really about data. So he has written an article that's out there, and he says, look, everybody's always talking about big data. He said, people should really talk about big operations, because what's the point of having the data when you don't do anything about it? So he makes the point that you have to action on the data, which brings me to the point, which my feeling is, just talking to customers, talking to other IT people out there, I think we have a lot of data, and often with business systems and so on, there's a lot more data there than is used in IT processes today. I have a feeling that Gen AI, because it makes that data so accessible, will kind of get us, hopefully, to use even more of the data. Maybe sometimes even not with Gen AI, maybe just, with SQL queries or, just making it part of a process. What do you think? Do you think there's a new movement to leverage AI? To leverage data better out there?
Yeah, many types of data that we weren't able to really get to before in an enterprise, such as take unstructured data that's in various enterprise knowledge documents. Suddenly now we can do a much better job of answering questions or finding information from those unstructured knowledge articles using generative AI-based, chatbots or conversational virtual assistants. While chatbots and virtual assistants have been there before, the way we had to make them work was kind of laborious, right? You have to write these dialogue flows. You have to teach them and train them to really understand the intents and entities. And it was an involved process, while there are tools in the market and all that. But generative AI-based chatbots are much simpler to build. You don't have to do all of that kind of stuff. So unstructured data, we can tap into it. We can even get to inside the PDF documents, into the tables and all of that, right? So that one category of data, the 80% of enterprises' data, which was not much tapped into before, is now possible to be, analyzed and you can derive insights from it. So that's one kind. Then there is a whole lot of content from various systems in an enterprise, right, which are to do with their health metrics, the logs, the events, the traces, which tell you what's happening, be it in IT operations or in security operations, whether an insider or an outsider threat is happening. And you start to see the patterns of logs and sign-ins, and all of those things are starting to look different only if you tap into them and you're able to make sense of them and derive insights from them, right? And these sets of data, metrics, logs, events, and traces have been somewhat of those types of data. People have done only, I would say, a half-baked job so far. That's because of the number of reasons. One is some of them are structured, fairly structured, like the metric data, and they are you can use more statistical, traditional machine learning types of techniques. But some of them, like logs, events, and traces, tend to be more semi-structured, and they also are in large volumes, and that makes it also much more difficult to derive insights from them. So there have been products and tools, I would say, doing pretty good job with anomaly detection models for processing this data, but they couldn't explain why certain things were anomalies. They'll just find out this pattern has changed. With LLMs, what you can do is now really go deep into getting those insights for better incident diagnosis, because you can, if there's an anomaly that's predicted with a more traditional anomaly detection system, you can now say, okay, anomaly happened between this period and this period, or at least the system noticed that anomalous pattern during this period. Now you can feed those logs and really start to ask more detailed questions in an interactive manner. So you're suddenly starting to see so many co-pilots emerging in the space of incident management, be it in operations domain or security domain and such, powered by LLMs. Similarly, if you have played around with some of these things, there are co-pilots for code generation, co-pilots for doing code reviews, co-pilots for drafting your first draft of emails given as title of your subject of your email. I've been playing around with MS365 Outlook co-pilots and in various Office suite products. Now suddenly you have that ability to give your prompts and generate text and generate PowerPoint slides with good templates, and the number of things that you can do and the number of data sources that you can reach out and derive insights off now suddenly has exploded. You can pretty much touch all aspects of enterprise data and start to derive insights from their data. Earlier, it used to be the case that it was mostly, data that was well organized in your database tables or your data warehouses or and such, to which you have written very with nice contracts with SQLs. Dashboards, and you could get access and insights only on that. And if you wanted a new report, you would have to ask somebody who knew how to write those SQL queries and create that report for you. But now with conversational virtual assistants, you can imagine even getting into structured data and dynamically creating text to SQL kind of things and executing them if you're comfortable. And if you build that into your workflow, build an automation out of it, and even create ad hoc reports and get to structured data in a conversational manner. So the number of use cases have exploded, and the types of data sources that you're able to get to in an enterprise, pretty much now everything is accessible in some shape or form.
No, it's fascinating. So I'm not sure but so I've been been part of the founding team of Workato, and it's now almost 9 years that we started the company. But my last job before that, I was actually the head of product at Splunk. And so the IT operations domain and the log management and so on, that's something that definitely is part of my experience. And it's fascinating what's possible there. I mean, we have people typically think of Workato. When they think of Workato, they think of business applications like an order to cash process, or maybe some kind of a customer or employee onboarding process or something. But we're very much used within IT as well. We have one of the early customers, Hans. He was the head of site reliability at Coupa. And so he basically got his... he had his IT ops tools that would generate alerts. And then he would basically use Workato to automate everything that's around. Now, I mean, for example, creating the equivalent of an outage bridge. But, now in the modern world, maybe with a Slack channel or something, populating all the experts on it, making sure that dashboards are automatically created so that people can just focus on troubleshooting and troubleshooting alone. They don't need to think about the logistics around it. So that's done with Workato. But I can now imagine with the power of AI then added, I mean, it's even going to be better. Do you have any, I'm just curious, around incidents or maybe other IT examples you might want to share, like what people you feel should be thinking about these days?
Oh, so many use cases. Since we are on the topic of IT operations management, yes, I'll share a few examples of use cases that we are working on. You mentioned about incident detection and diagnosis, right? And in Slack and IRT channels. If you go back to what I was saying earlier with tapping into logs, metrics, traces, and events types of things. One use case that we're actively looking at is this incident detection and diagnosis. Detection happens through anomaly detection, more classic statistical machine learning, of course, still, because that's more amenable for, classic machine learning. But the explanations part of it with copilots, that's one use case where we are actively working with some vendor solutions that we are using, but we are also building things around the vendor products. Then the diagnosis part of it, incident resolution with automations, and again, powered by LLMs driving some of the orchestration and suggestions for automations there. Change management process, change risk prediction, right? Changes drive a lot of incidents typically in organizations if they're not tested and managed well. So as changes are happening, how do we give enough suggestions and enough information, insights into what all things get impacted as a result, and as a result of the change that you're making, and what things to watch out for and test, and even providing coding suggestions and code reviews and test cases generation, and all of those things are good use cases for LLMs these days, and we are beginning to look at some of those use cases. Incident summarization, root cause analysis, these are also pretty huge use cases for LLMs. You can say, hey, did this incident happen before? If so, what were the symptoms? How much was the impact? What actions were taken that led to resolutions quickly? All of those things you can get very quickly from, matching with semantic embeddings. Same thing for root cause analysis. What caused it? What was it traced to? If you have good documentation from previous ones, or even you can go back in time and as a post-mortem analysis, go through all of your prior incidents and generate summaries and root cause analysis from it, and save them for harvesting for future, leverage of incident diagnosis. These are some of the things in IT operations management side. You can imagine use cases in the IT service management on the front end where, callers are calling with problems in their with their systems, be it connecting to VPN or something with the laptop, or want to order peripherals. And for many of those things, you can automate with conversational virtual assistants with self-help. That's a huge use case for LLMs, and also supporting help desk agents themselves by providing instructions for resolving certain problems quickly. That's another use case for agent help kind of things. You could imagine, call transcription and summarization. Transcriptions, of course, happen with speech to text types of technologies, but you can quickly summarize those and offer live agent help, or even live customer help while they're waiting online to talk to customer support agents. So many other use cases, employee onboarding and streamlining that, and providing more personalized onboarding experience to new employees. And you can imagine dozens of use cases in HR, sales, productivity, supply chain. The list goes on and on. Depending on how long you want me to go on, we can talk about more use cases, but there are so many use cases across all aspects of the enterprise that LLMs can really now make a huge difference and optimize and improve the efficiency and productivity.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these, what you explained in a lot of detail on the IT side, kind of can be abstracted to business process. I mean, the concept of an anomaly, it can be in an IT system, but it could be in a business process, maybe a anomalous order or anomalous supply chain event or something like that. I think you talked about one specific thing when you went into more of a knowledge management around, what incidents happened before, and then just being aware of that and leveraging, when something happens again, being aware of that. I think the knowledge management area, this is just my personal opinion, that's gonna go through a big revolution.
That's the first use case in fact everybody is trying, right? With chatbots and virtual assistants. It's the most logical use case to go after because there is all this knowledge that's been buried in an enterprise, and suddenly you can get to it with retrieval augmented generation and with vector databases. Actually, for the first time, we have a good shot at addressing the enterprise search problem effectively, right? Which has been a nagging problem for enterprises. We've never really solved that very well, but now with enterprise search being able to leverage vector databases and semantic embeddings, it's looking good. We can get to a lot of documents that previously we weren't able to get to, and now add those as inputs into your answer generation and finding the right answers for questions or conversation support. Suddenly you can bring up you can answer any questions and have a good provide good conversational virtual assistant in enterprises. One should also, I'll just add one more point to that cautionary statement though. While these use cases are now they're so doable, and we can get to all of the enterprise knowledge and build chatbots and such, they also start to surface interesting data governance problems that need to be tackled first before you can deploy these generative AI solutions more broadly, because suddenly you can get to data that you weren't able to get to before, and that starts to expose likely documents that weren't properly protected in an enterprise, because of which now everybody's able to see some sensitive data. So we are going through some of those types of steps where we're going through how do we protect our data and have proper processes for data governance, because now suddenly the search is good and the chatbots are able to provide very good responses to the questions on all kinds of data, including sensitive data that should have been protected correctly in the first place.
Totally. It reminds me of my Splunk days. You might get the idea when you have a log management search engine, what kind of like a Splunk was. What we found in the log data, you can imagine there was a lot of data that should have never been there, like privacy-related data that then something like Splunk actually surfaced to the top. But yeah, no, totally. I mean, I get it. Hopefully, it just gives us a new sense of responsibility, and it also, at least, kind of brings it at the top to the top of our mind.
Yeah, the data governance
to the forefront that we have to do something about it. Right. Correct. But yeah, I think the potential is just phenomenal. So maybe one more personal experience I had, and this goes way back. So think of right before the internet boom, like 99, I worked at a strategy consulting firm, Booz Allen and Hamilton. And one of the things that we had back then that none of the other competitors had, the McKinseys and Boston Consultings and so on, we had a system called Knowledge Online. And it was basically a search engine. That was the early day. This was before Google, right? So there was a search engine where we could search through anonymized customer projects and what happened. And it really was a superpower. Because, if you have access now to hundreds and thousands of projects that happened before you, it just accelerates everything. And now I think with the LLMs, as you said, and vector databases and kind of a knowledge management architecture, I think we're reaching another level, which actually you don't even need to know well how to search for it. It's like you can really find things just so much easier.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
That phrase "superpower" always reminds me. With great power comes great responsibility. The quote from I guess Spider-Man movie, which resonates so aptly now with LLMs, because these are kind of superpowers, and so you have to use them responsibly, ethically, and and with proper data governance and with correct amount accuracy, fairness, transparency. All of those things kind of come to the forefront, and they have to be properly addressed as we think about more large-scale deployments.
No, thank you. No, I totally couldn't agree more. Let me ask you. So one maybe to get to closure here on the interview, but I'd be curious if you had some advice to the listeners, to the audience sitting in here, talking about AI, talking about automation, be it within IT ops or be it in the larger context of business operations. Do you have any words of wisdom? Like, what would you tell people? What should they do? What should they not do? Maybe what do you see most people not doing that they should be doing? Just curious.
Well, I go back to the last point I made, which is that, when you really leverage them and harness them responsibly and strategically with the proper guardrails, these technologies, really AI and automation technologies, can empower organizations to achieve their, business goals with high levels of efficiency, operations efficiencies, business productivity, IT and security productivity, and so on, and also improve employee productivity. So in terms of what to do, what not to do, I would say, from my own experience, I can say that, first of all, have open mind and pretty much go with the idea that everything is now could potentially be transformed. So you have to rethink all the business processes and everything that's being done before. Just take a fresh look at it and see, what could we do differently here? Is this something that we can do by leveraging the new wave of technologies with generative AI or with automations? More likely than not, you probably can optimize, and these technologies would really help take those processes to the next level. So taking a fresh look at everything that we're doing is one thing that would really help to figure out which of these are something that you can really tackle. Once you have an idea of that, then you can prioritize, right? I mean, because you can't go after all of them, then you can really sit down and prioritize with your teams as to which ones will bring the most value for the investments that you can make, and have a roadmap of which ones and how you would go about leveraging the technologies. And then I would say be mindful and aware that these technologies, especially generative AI, is evolving, and so you have to be very dynamic and you have to be able to adapt to changes that are happening, because the models are changing. New models are coming up every day, and do you work with smaller models? Do you work with or customize them? Would they be cheaper? Would they be more economic for your use cases versus bigger models that you may have to pay? And over time, costs will add up. So taking all of those things into account, you have to be very agile and adaptable. So ensure that you are doing proper proofs of concepts and pilots and proper testing when you are deploying these transformative technologies, so that you have better control over the outcomes and also the process. It's important. Going through security, governance, compliance is critical. Otherwise, you may rush to deploying something and then have to trace back or worse yet, land yourself in some kind of a compliance issue or something like that. So just be very agile, know that the space is changing. So build your platforms and infrastructure for that iterative development, and then learn from whatever is happening and incorporate those learnings and move forward. That's what I would say from my experience, because the so fast paced and changing so much. So to sum it up, I would say first, be aware that everything around you, all the business processes are likely good candidates for some kind of transformation or the other. So reassess them, take a fresh look at them. And second thing is prioritize based on the investments and based on the outcomes that you're likely to get and the amount of changes that will result in. And third thing is, know that the technology is changing so fast. And so you have to have flexible architectures that will allow you to adapt and change. And in doing so, ensure that you are being cautious and testing well, compliant, and taking various things into account, such as cost economics and other things. So those would be my three suggestions for considering, LLMs and generative AI and automation types of technologies in enterprises.
Perfect. Really love it, to be honest. So I'm not sure if you realize, but I'm sitting here and, for every one of these podcast interviews, kind of my idea and my mission is to kind of like distill one little nugget of, because we're doing 26 of them. So I'm hoping I've got 26 nuggets that together will really help people move forward in this new world. But I'm not sure if you've read the book that Vijay, our CEO, has written, The New Automation Mindset. It mirrors very well what you just articulated, right? So because it's perfect, because I think that would be my nugget here. I think you said it in your own words, and that's perfect. But I think what Vijay put in the book was he talked about the growth mindset, right? Be open. Things will be different. It might not be the same process anymore, right? You might have to rethink everything. There's the element about the process mindset, which I think there's a lot of things that come to mind. I would completely agree with you that everyone doing this has probably a bigger spotlight on them now because things, there's more data accessible and so on. You want to really make sure the governance is right. But then the last element is what we talk about is the scale mindset of how do we scale that out in a governed way? Because I do believe with that, what you talked about, the agile mindset and the iterations and so on, I don't think that this can happen just within a few people in IT. Like if you think about business processes, right? It's gotta be inclusive. It's gotta include the people doing it today, more business-oriented people. Of course, also IT developers, but it's gotta be I think Gartner uses that term fusion team. And I think that's, just like we do agile development in software anyway, right? Where we're used to that, but I'm not sure everybody in IT around the world does that. I think a lot of people are still in their waterfall kind of worlds. And I do think these LLMs and so on, they're probably, and the new automation ways, they're gonna, I think IT organizations need to adapt to a much more agile approach. So, really enjoyed talking to you. There's probably lots of other things we could talk about. I want to thank you for spending the time here with us. I'm sure the audience probably has many, many more questions, but it's it's exciting to have you here on the podcast, and I'm really curious. Maybe we can do another check-in in 6 months. Maybe the world will be completely different yet again.
Yeah, who knows? We'll be on the leaderboard by then for for the LLM models. Yeah, Markus, it's been a pleasure being on your podcast and kind of reminiscing through the times when we looks like you were also working on similar types of things in the BPM world, and kind of how thinking about what we were working on back then and how things have evolved to the present day times. So thanks for some of the thoughtful questions that made me kind of think about those times as well and connect the dots from the work that was done back then to now. And also thanks to Workato. I was at a panel, I think maybe a month or two ago, and this book was given to me as a gift, and it's I enjoyed reading it, and it's a good overview of the space and how to think about automation. So I enjoyed reading the book and enjoyed the conversation with you. Thank you. I hope your listeners will find it valuable.
Yeah, thank you, Rama. Once again, I'm super excited, and good luck at NVIDIA. You guys are obviously really critical to this new revolution that's going on here.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for tuning into today's The New Automation Mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. If you want to learn more about the key topics we've covered in the show, you can find them in the book, The New Automation Mindset by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Also, leave us a comment and let us know what you thought of today's conversations. And don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.